Welcome back, folks. We are halfway through the International Desert Conservation Summit, brought to you by the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens in Palm Desert, California, in the United States. For our next talk, we have our fifth and final of the talks from Africa. And this is going to be from Dr. Monica Bond, who is co-founder and co-director of Wild Nature Institute, an organization that specializes on giraffe conservation. The title of her talk is True Tall Tales from Tanzania. Try saying that 3 times fast. Giraffe Science and Reasons for Hope in the Biodiversity and Climate Crises. Monica, take it away.
I'm Monica Bond with the Wild Nature Institute, and thanks for tuning in today to hear about giraffes. Giraffes are immediately recognizable and beloved throughout the world because we're constantly surrounded by images of big animals like giraffes. We believe that they're abundant, when in reality, all of the big animals like giraffes, elephants, rhinos, and lions are headed towards extinction. In 1 year, 800,000 Sophie the rubber giraffe toys are sold in France, which is 8 times more Sophies than all the giraffes remaining in the African wild today. In this talk, I'm going to share some tall tales from Tanzania about giraffe science and reasons for hope in the biodiversity and climate crises. My colleagues and I from Wild Nature Institute have stories to share about giraffes, why they're struggling for survival, and what's being done to help them in their African savanna homelands. Although giraffes are facing serious challenges, this will be a story of hope. This ancient rock art image of giraffes from Algeria shows humans have been visual storytellers for a very long time. This presentation is a form of visual storytelling that I hope will entertain as much as it educates. I'll have love stories to warm our hearts. I'll have adventure stories for excitement. I'll have murder mysteries to solve. I'll share stories of people banding together to fight a common enemy, and stories of real-life superheroes who dedicate and risk their lives to save giraffes. So let's go on a journey together to the African savanna. This landscape preserves some of the world's last wild nature. 9 years ago, the Wild Nature Institute started a long-term science, education, and action program to save giraffes in Tanzania. So why did we choose giraffes? Giraffes are popular, beautiful, iconic. Giraffes can be a lightning rod that channels the energy of human ingenuity and cooperation into protecting wild nature. The major focus of our giraffe conservation research is population ecology, or the study of births, deaths, and movements. Understanding why births, deaths, and movements are different in one place compared to another tells us why a population is increasing or decreasing. This provides the critical information we need to successfully protect wildlife. How do you quantify births, deaths, and movements? You do this by identifying individual animals and observing them repeatedly through time. Luckily, giraffes have a natural built-in identifier, just like our thumbprint. This is their individually unique spot patterns. We identify giraffes from photographs of their spot patterns and track them throughout their lives without ever having to touch or disturb them. These are spot patterns from Tarangire National Park. You can see the incredible amount of variation in these spot patterns, even in the very same population. Ours is one of the biggest studies of a wild animal in history. And as we learn more about giraffes, we're developing the most effective conservation measures to save them from extinction. Giraffes are very large, growing up to 19 feet tall, and can live up to 40 years. Females form herds with other related females and their young. They give birth in any month of the year, and they typically have only one calf at a time, which they hide for the first couple of weeks before bringing it to meet the rest of the herd. This calf is still in hiding and has not yet joined the others. Once mom and calf join the herd, the calves form groups called creches, and one or a couple of older females watch over the creche so the other mothers can travel around to find food and water. After about 4 or 5 years, Young males leave their mother and form bachelor herds where they fight to establish a dominance hierarchy. When they become older bulls, at about 8 years old, they're mostly solitary, roaming around on an endless search for females in estrus. Giraffes share the African savanna with the richest diversity and abundance of large mammals on Earth. In our study areas, we still have the full suite of predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas. We also have some of the densest elephant populations in Africa and thousands of migratory wildebeests and zebras. Tanzania is a place where we can get a glimpse of the Earth as it was thousands of years ago when wild animals ruled the world. This is a map of the current range of all the subspecies of giraffes. There's been a 40% total decline over the past few decades, and giraffes have disappeared from several countries where they used to live. The Maasai giraffe in East Africa is the most numerous subspecies, and most of them reside in the country of Tanzania, where we work. But the giraffe population in Tanzania has declined by 52% since 1980. The biggest threats to giraffes are habitat loss, deforestation for cooking fuel, and illegal killing for bushmeat markets. Wild Nature Institute's conservation activities address all these impacts at the landscape scale using science, community education, and actions to protect wildlife and trees and to promote Indigenous peoples' rights. Our research program is focused in the Serengeti and Tarangire ecosystems, two of the greatest wildlife areas in the world. In Serengeti, the majority of the wildlife habitat is protected lands marked in green. In Tarangire, most land is not protected, but it is inhabited mostly by livestock keeping Maasai people, who are our allies in protecting giraffe habitat from destruction by farmers. We use digital photos, computer vision, and pattern recognition software to monitor births, deaths, movements, and behaviors of more than 4,000 individual giraffes. Our research is investigating how giraffes are affected by the world around them, including natural predators, disease, poaching or presence of humans, and vegetation. We can even see how intrinsic individual traits, like the type of spots they have, affect their evolutionary fitness. 6 times per year, we spend a few weeks surveying for giraffes all day long and bush camping each night. We count and map hundreds of groups of giraffes and take more than 1,000 photographs of giraffe spot patterns every survey. We're working with big data for tall animals, so we use artificial intelligence and algorithms to automate some of our work. After we collect our ID photos, an artificial intelligence finds the giraffe in each picture and crops the photo. A pattern matching software uses computer vision to score the 1,000 new photos we get each survey against the more than 50,000 existing photos, making millions of comparisons. So, after collecting and processing all of the photographs and analyzing the data, what kinds of things have we discovered? Let's begin our tall tales with a mystery about spots. Consider, no other mammal on Earth has spots like a giraffe. The safari guides we speak with often ask us, does a baby giraffe inherit its spot pattern from mom? We didn't know, but it's a great question, so we set about answering it. Here we see 5 examples of mother-calf pairs, and you can see there are similarities between mother and offspring. We measured spots on wild giraffes and found some aspects of spot shape are inherited from mothers to calves. We also found that variation in spot shapes among calves affected their survival during the first few months of life, so camouflage likely plays a role in early calf survival. Our next story is a love story that's also an adventure story and a biography of the first giraffe scientist. Giraffology started with this woman, Anne Innes-Dagg, known as the woman who loves giraffes. She left Canada and went on an adventure to Africa alone in 1956 and was one of the first people to study animal behavior in the wild. She had a difficult time because men kept telling her she couldn't go to Africa and study giraffes because she's a woman. She persevered and became the godmother of all giraffe scientists. She's also an inspiring person for her lifelong struggle for a more just and caring world. I encourage you to read about her or see the movie that was recently made about her life. Another love story is the story of giraffe friendships. Here are all the giraffes in Tarangire, with lines linking those that have been seen to hang out with each other. And this is like the Facebook Friends network of giraffes. Giraffes have a complex social system that's similar to the societies of humans and chimpanzees. Individuals hang out with a subset of other giraffes in their neighborhood, but they like some much more than others, and there are clear units of friendship. Here, the colored dots indicate about 1,000 adult female giraffes and their social communities. These are the giraffe girl gangs of Tarangire. Even in the same area in space, there can be multiple communities of giraffes overlapping, but they do not interact with each other. Amazingly, these girl gangs have different survival and reproductive rates, so social communities could play a role in evolution. We know humans are incredibly social animals with happiness and survival benefits from having good friendships. Well, it's the same with giraffes. We found that the main determinant of adult female survival is the number of friends she hangs out with. For these females, having relationships with familiar individuals can reduce stress and improve health, just like with people. A classic adventure tale is the hero's journey, where a young adult goes out into the world and overcomes adversity to discover some great truth. The animal version of this adventure is called dispersal, when a juvenile giraffe leaves its mother and starts a new independent life. This dispersal is very important because it spreads genetic diversity around the landscape, and it's how animals move into new areas or recolonize areas where they previously had disappeared. However, dispersal patterns for giraffes were unknown before we conducted our research. This represents a young adult giraffe in the social community of its mother, where it was born. If this male moves to a new social community that did not overlap with his mother's social community, he'll find new females to breed with that he's not related to. But it's dangerous because he's going into unknown territory where he's more likely to die. We discovered a phenomenon in giraffes called social dispersal, where young males stay in the same familiar area where they were born and raised, but join a different overlapping female social community. So inbreeding is avoided without the danger of a long-distance trip. Young males usually moved into new social communities, but young females usually stayed in the same social community where they were born. It's important for female giraffes to maintain their relationships over their entire lifetime. Now for some darker stories, murder mysteries. This is an adult female and her 6-month-old calf out for a pleasant walk in the savannah, but dangers lurk in the bushes. Some of our adult females and calves die each year under suspicious circumstances. We investigated likely culprits, and we think we found the guilty parties. We found adult female survival is higher inside the national parks, where they're well protected from the poachers who are mostly outside the parks. Then we found calf survival was higher outside the parks, where there are fewer natural predators like lions and hyenas. So it appears that the killers of giraffe have age preferences, where natural predators are responsible for the calf deaths, and humans are responsible for killing the adults. Now, since this analysis was done in 2015, there's been less poaching in Tanzania thanks to the government anti-poaching and anti-corruption efforts. And we're excited to report that our data now show the new government's efforts have resulted in higher adult female giraffe survival outside of parks. Another interesting thing we found was how the lions and migratory herds of wildebeest and zebras affect giraffe calf survival. Wildebeest and zebras migrate around the ecosystem, so their local densities change a lot over the course of each year. Giraffes and lions do not migrate. We found that survival of giraffe babies depends on the presence or absence of the migratory herds. When there are lots of wildebeest and zebras around, the lions tend to eat them, and giraffe calves have higher survival. But when there are few wildebeest and zebras around, the lions eat more giraffe calves. So there's a link between the migratory animals and giraffes. And as the migratory herds decrease in numbers due to human land uses and poaching, then giraffes are also negatively affected. To save giraffes, we must save the other animals too. Now for another love story. Who is loving whom? We don't know. Nobody knows which males are fathering the calves in wild giraffe herds. There are lots of different strategies males could be using to win the hearts and other body parts of females. Right now, we have no idea which strategies giraffes use and which are most successful under different conditions. But genetics can tell us. And this is a focus of our current research. The DNA from our new dung collection project is genotyping all the giraffes in our study. So soon we'll know who is related to whom, and we'll have an exciting conclusion to the tale of who is loving whom. Some heroes stay at home and fight to save their community. Wildlife management areas, or WMAs, are community conservation areas where villagers dedicate a portion of their lands to wildlife habitat and make money from tourism. WMAs are providing crucial funds for local people who agree to set aside some of their village lands for wildlife. And then these funds pay for schools and health clinics and other projects. But were the WMAs working for wildlife? No one had ever documented this. We found that these WMAs are indeed successfully conserving wildlife. Here you see that giraffe survival increased after the Burundi WMA was established, while during the same period, survival remained constant in the adjacent national park. So we know that the increased survival here was due to the WMA conservation activities. So we've shown that community conservation plays a very important role in the future of giraffes. These are some real-life Tanzanian superheroes. Wild Nature Institute supports parks and community conservation areas, not just with our research, but also by celebrating law enforcement anti-poaching rangers and village game scouts. Many heroes are created, not born. So we're encouraging Tanzanian scientists to become superheroes for giraffes. Last year, we began working with Dr. George Lohay. He's developing techniques to collect DNA from giraffe dung for our genetic studies. Our Tanzanian crew is conducting our giraffe photographic surveys. And we're advising Tanzanian master students like Matana Levy, who's studying giraffe diet and foraging ecology in Tarangire. However, all the science in the world will not save giraffes without the support of the people who live alongside these animals. It's especially important to inspire the next generation of conservationists. So another important aspect of our work is community education. We developed our Celebrating Africa's Giants education program to inspire Tanzanian children to save giraffes, elephants, rhinos, wildebeests, and all the creatures that share the savanna with them. We produce children's books and posters and accompanying learning activities that teachers are using in the classroom. We use stories to create a bond of empathy between kids and animals. Stories where animals are the main characters and the animals are experiencing things that kids can relate to. And, very important, the books are visually beautiful and the story entertaining, so learning is fun. Now you want to talk about superheroes. Teachers are big-time superheroes. We host workshops for teachers where they learn and practice the hands-on activities that they'll be using in the classroom. And to date, we've trained more than 200 teachers throughout Tanzania to implement our Juma the Giraffe education program. Our giraffe education program has reached more than 26,000 kids across Tanzania. And we just hired a new education coordinator because demand for our program is so high. We organize giraffe fun days in schools where the kids celebrate giraffes by doing drama and arts, planting trees, playing sports, eating a free meal, and having a great time. So in this way, kids connect giraffe conservation with food and fun. We take kids on outings to their neighborhood national parks. Here, our Tanzanian education coordinator took children to Lake Manyara National Park, which is near where they live, but they had never visited. We produce Swahili gospel and hip hop songs about giraffes, how beautiful and amazing they are, and how we must protect them. And we play these on the radio and television and on buses, reaching thousands of Tanzanians with creative media messaging. Wild Nature Institute scientists are affiliated with Penn State University and the University of Zurich, and our largest supporters are listed here. We couldn't do this important work without the support of these zoos and foundations, and we thank them. Saving giraffes from extinction will take concerted efforts to address the problems that giraffes and other wildlife are facing: direct killing and loss of habitat. We need effective community conservation to help people and giraffes to thrive together. Wild Nature Institute's goal is to have a world with more living giraffes than rubber giraffe toys. And we think that based on these stories of hope and with our built-in human superhero powers, together we could make that world a reality. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Monica, thank you so much for that story, that series of stories. I think you're an even better storyteller on camera than you are even in person, and I didn't think that was possible.
Thank you.
So now joining us live from North Carolina to speak about the work that she does in her adopted home country of Tanzania, newly minted Dr. Monica Bond.
Thanks.
Hey, Monica, how are you?
I am wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's really such an honor to be here with such an illustrious group of speakers. It's just really amazing people doing amazing work out there. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, well, we have the great honor of being able to work with amazing folks like yourself in your organizations. So we got a bunch of questions for you, actually, and we have some time to be able to answer them in as well, about 10 minutes or so. So y'all have been very much focused on studying giraffe behavior, giraffe movement, that kind of thing. And there's been, a lot of breakthroughs that you've had, the genetics, the passing of the pattern on, the impacts of social groups and male dispersal and all of that. But is there a particular behavior or suite of behaviors that you were most surprised by?
That's a really good question. I think probably just one of the most interesting things that we're discovering now is the complex social behaviors of giraffes. Because it wasn't that long ago, people really thought giraffe relationships were rather random. And so they would kind of see groups because they have the way that their society is that they have these herds that kind of merge together and split apart, and they all move very slowly. And it just kind of seemed they were wandering around looking for some food here and there. And it was really thought that the only strong relationship was a temporary one between a mother and her calf. And now it's with our work and also work of other folks, people doing work in Kenya and also in Namibia, understanding more and more about their social relationships and how they do actually have much more complex social structure, relationships that they prefer to have with some and then they don't really have with others. And most importantly, I think what we're just discovering with our research is how important those friendships are to their survival. So we focused on adult females who are really the most important. If you're a wildlife biologist, it's kind of the most important segment of the population for an animal like a giraffe. They're long-lived. Each adult female is incredibly important to the population. And so we were finding that the number of friends a giraffe has is even more important than the vegetation she's in, her proximity to people. It's very important. And I think this is interesting because it's something that humans can relate to. Friends and family and relationships are important to us too. And we suspect this is because they share really in raising of their young. As I mentioned in the talk, they form these creches, and one or a couple of adult females or sub-adults can kind of watch over the creche. Other moms can go out. And so having a lot of these friends to help raise your offspring and just also being around familiar others reduces stress. And I think that is passed on to higher survival. So what that tells us the next step is for conservation, it's important to not be breaking up these groups. And so, you know, when people go out and poach individuals or even remove them for translocations, you really need to be thinking about the importance of their social relationships with each other. So I think this is a useful information to have for conservation.
It does have so many implications, doesn't it, for so many aspects of conservation. Care, movement, all sorts of things. Because we used to think that it was just fission fusion, that they were just getting together or separating seemingly randomly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So a question about the great education and outreach work that you all do, which we've had the honor of being able to help support, of course.
Yes, you have.
But has that community engagement helped to change perceptions of giraffe and encourage a more positive and receptive and supportive attitude towards giraffe conservation in the communities that your folks, that yourself and James, your James, as you call him, are having out in the communities?
Yeah, also a very good question, and one that we will be able to answer even better in a little bit once we continue applying the wonderful social science assessments that you have been training us in. So I think a lot of the other organizations speaking today have been the recipients, like we have, of your amazing trainings in how to actually rigorously assess the impacts of these education programs that we have. And so we have been implementing the Juma the Giraffe program, but we really didn't have a way to assess how this might be impacting the attitudes and the knowledge and the behaviors of the children and the communities where we were implementing these activities. So we actually, you just came last year, the middle of last year, it helped us, you trained us up in how to kind of design a really good rigorous assessment, and we've just begun implementing this. And then we had the COVID situation, and schools were locked down in Tanzania for a while. They're back up again. We just hired a new education coordinator. We're really excited. It's actually a partnership with the Ann Innes Dagg Foundation. You might recall in my talk, I talked about Ann Innes Dagg. She likes the work that we do with giraffes, and so she wanted to support our work, and we're having an honorary Ann Innes Dagg education coordinator. We hired a woman in the spirit of promoting women in conservation, and she will then be implementing the Juma program and doing these assessments to really get a deep understanding of how we are influencing not just the kids, but then also the communities. And one more thing I was going to say, we focus on giraffes here, but we also wrote some books about elephants and rhinoceros, and we're only just beginning to implement the elephant program. We haven't really done much yet, just trained the teachers and had the workshops with the teachers. So giraffes, we're sort of lucky in that there is not conflict with people. The giraffe is the national animal of Tanzania. People love them. They're already accepted. They don't eat crops. They don't kill people. People are proud of giraffes. The issues that we have is that people do poach them for meat. And so there's a lot of education we need to do about why that's harmful. But once we start getting into elephant education, as I know so many of the other organizations here understand, then you start getting into where people fear them, and people seem to know somebody in their family or a friend or somebody they know in their community has been killed by elephants. They raid crops. So there we want to do a really intensive assessment as well as to how our elephant education program is working to change people's attitudes about elephants and their actions that they take to protect them.
Right. Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
You know, I think something that's been really fantastic about your community engagement and stakeholder outreach programs that you do is the creativity that you've brought with it. You played some of the video of the more hip hop song, kind of contemporary song, also the Tuatunze Twiga, the gospel song that you had, that we actually had playing during the intercession at the last break, of course, too. It's really wonderful ways to be able to reach people in different modes than conservationists usually think.
Right, yeah, absolutely. We, the kind of creative messaging, I think, is really, really important. And so with our education program, Celebrating Africa's Giants, in the classrooms, it was important to us to design our materials to be visually beautiful. So we actually had volunteers from people who work in zoos in the US who design zoo exhibits. So they really know how to reach people with information about wildlife in a visually compelling way. So we designed these posters. We had these books that we wrote with the stories that are engaging, and a lot like I had noticed, we just saw nothing like that in Tanzania. Stories where the animals are the key characters, and they have personalities so kids can relate to them. A little bit like the black mambas, we're talking about the elephant and the rhino helping the snake. You have these where people can kind of think differently about the animal characters. We also believe that's important as well. So they need to be visually beautiful. It needs to be fun. And so there's that. And then also we thought about other ways that people could hear the messages in the communities. And people listen to the radio. That's how they get their news. And so we wrote this, we commissioned a gospel is also a very popular form of music. So we had a popular gospel choir wrote a song about the importance of giraffes and how God urges us to protect them and how we shouldn't be poaching them. And we played that on the radio. And thanks to Living Desert, you, James, and Alex helped out with we did some on the street random questionnaires to people to see how people's attitudes might have changed with that. And we think we had some positive results from that, people who heard the song. And then we also, made this hip hop video. That was actually a Tanzanian who approached us, and he said he wanted to make a video. He wanted to write a song and make a video about giraffes. He's sort of active in this organization called Music for Conservation. And we said, yeah, sounds great. And we fully supported him. And so you saw the little clip in the video of his. And so that's been playing on television. And it's been playing also on buses. So you have a lot of people get places around Tanzania on buses. Long distance, they always have a little video machine there. Everybody watches. And so he worked with the bus association, and they've been playing that. So it's reaching, I'm going to say, literally thousands of people with that song. And that style of music is popular as well. So we really think it's important to kind of meet people where they are, have something that's fun to listen to. People can share the song on their phone and it can be their ringtone. And then it just gets people kind of excited, engaged about, and proud of their national animal to make them think twice about whether they're going to buy that giraffe meat in the market. Right.
Awesome. Well, Monica, thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge and expertise and your awesome storytelling. I can't under.
Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your partnership. And thanks everybody out there for listening today.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Monica. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the good work that you do on behalf of giraffes and Africa's giants.
Thank you.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.